September 30th, 1955, 5:45 p.m. Highway 46, California, a silver Porsche 550 Spider traveling at 85 miles per hour. James Dean at the wheel, and in his jacket pocket, folded carefully, a letter that would have destroyed Audrey Hepburn's career. The crash happened at 5:45 p.m. exactly. A Ford Tudor turned left. Dean couldn't stop. Metal screaming, glass shattering, the Porsche crumpling like paper. Dean died almost instantly. 24 years old, the biggest rising star in Hollywood. Gone. But that's not the story they tell. The story they don't tell is what the highway patrol found when they pulled Dean's body from the wreckage. His leather jacket torn and bloody, and in the inside pocket, protected somehow from the impact, a letter. Officer Ron Nelson unfolded it carefully, read the first line. His face went white. "Jimmy, I can't keep pretending this didn't happen. I can't keep pretending you don't exist." It was signed A. Nelson kept reading. By the third paragraph, he understood. This wasn't fan mail. This was a love letter from a married woman to James Dean. And from the details, the references to 3 days in September, the mention of your hands in my hair, the desperate plea, leave her and choose me, this was recent. Very recent. Nelson looked at his partner. "We need to call this in. This could be big." "Who's A?" his partner asked. "I don't know, but whoever she is, she's married, and she's in trouble if this gets out." The letter was logged as evidence, photographed, filed, and within 3 hours, someone in the police department made a phone call. Not to the press, to someone who knew that James Dean had been seeing someone famous, someone married. The call reached Audrey Hepburn's publicist at 9 p.m. that same night. "Miss Hepburn, we have a situation." Audrey was in New York, preparing for a charity event. She'd heard about Dean's death on the radio at 7 p.m., had excused herself from dinner, gone to her hotel room, cried alone for 2 hours. And now her publicist was calling about a situation. "What situation?" Her voice was hoarse from crying. "The police found a letter in James Dean's pocket, a love letter." Audrey's blood went cold. "What letter?" "A letter signed A, describing a 3-day affair in September, making it very clear the writer is married, making it very clear she wants Dean to leave his girlfriend." The room tilted. "Do they know it's from me?" "Not yet, but they will. The details match, the timeline matches. And if the press gets hold of this, make it go away," Audrey said. Her voice was shaking but firm. "I don't care what it costs. Make it disappear. Miss Hepburn, destroying police evidence is—" "I said, make it go away." She was screaming now. "Do you understand what will happen if that letter becomes public? My marriage is over. My career is over. Everything is over. It's going to cost at least $100,000, maybe more. I don't care. Pay it. Pay whatever they want. Just make sure that letter never sees daylight." She hung up, sat on the floor of her hotel room, and realized that James Dean was dead, and her first thought hadn't been grief. It had been damage control. That's when the guilt started, the guilt that would follow her for 38 years until she died. But to understand the guilt, you need to understand what happened in September, the 3 days that changed everything. September 15th, 1955. Warner Brothers lot. Audrey was there for costume fittings for War and Peace. Dean was shooting scenes for Giant. They'd met before, briefly. Industry parties. Exchanged pleasantries. Nothing more. But on September 15th, something was different. Audrey was having problems with Mel Ferrer. Again. He was controlling, jealous, suffocating. She was 26 years old and felt like she was drowning in her own marriage. She saw Dean walking across the lot, leather jacket, cigarette, that dangerous energy he carried everywhere, and she did something she'd never done before. She called out to him, "James, Do you have a light? He turned, walked over, lit her cigarette. And the way he looked at her, not like Audrey Hepburn, movie star, like Audrey. Just Audrey, seen, understood, known. You don't usually smoke, he said. How do you know? I notice things. You're too perfect to smoke, too controlled. Maybe I'm tired of being perfect. He smiled. Then you're talking to the right person. I'm very good at being imperfect. They talked for 20 minutes, then an hour. Then Dean said, I'm going to ride my motorcycle up the coast tomorrow. Want to come? She should have said no. She was married. He had a girlfriend. This was dangerous. Yes, she said. Yes, I do. September 16th. Dean picked her up at 6 a.m. She'd told Mel she was visiting a friend, wore jeans and a simple shirt, no makeup, hair in a ponytail. She looked like a teenager. They rode up the Pacific Coast Highway, Dean's motorcycle between her legs, her arms around his waist. The wind, the ocean, the freedom. They stopped at a diner in Malibu, ate breakfast, talked about everything. He told her about growing up in Indiana, about feeling like an outsider, about the acting that saved him. She told him about the war, about being hungry, about marrying Mel because she thought marriage meant safety, about realizing too late that she'd traded one kind of prison for another. Why don't you leave him? Dean asked. Because I don't know how to be alone. I've never been alone. I went from my mother's house to Mel's house. I don't know who I am without someone telling me. Maybe that's who you need to meet, yourself, without anyone else defining you. They rode back as the sun was setting, and when they got to her hotel, Dean said, Can I come up? She should have said no. Yes. What happened in that hotel room over the next 3 days, September 16th, 17th, and 18th, Audrey would never tell anyone, not even her closest friends. But it was passionate, desperate, all-consuming. Dean made her feel alive in a way she'd never felt, made her feel seen, made her feel like herself instead of like Audrey Hepburn, perfect princess. On September 18th, lying in bed, Dean said, Leave him. Leave Mel. Be with me. I can't. Why not? Because you're 24, I'm 26, you have a girlfriend, I have a husband. The scandal would destroy both our careers. I don't care about my career. I care about you. You say that now, but you will care. When the studios blacklist you, when the press tears you apart, when your parents read about you in the papers. Then we'll run away. Go to Europe. Start over. James, that's a fantasy. Is this a fantasy? He kissed her. Are the last 3 days a fantasy, or is your marriage the fantasy? Your perfect image, your controlled life? She started crying. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Figure it out, Dean said, because I can't do this halfway. Either we're together or we're not. Either you choose me or you choose the lie. But I won't be your secret. He left that night, angry, hurt. And Audrey lay alone in the hotel room and realized she'd just lost something she didn't know she needed until she had it. September 25th, 1 week later. Audrey hadn't heard from Dean. She was back with Mel, pretending everything was fine, dying inside. She wrote the letter, late at night, alone, desperate. Jimmy, I can't keep pretending this didn't happen. I can't keep pretending you don't exist. I've spent the last week trying to forget you, and I can't. You're in every thought, every breath. You made me feel alive, and now I'm just existing again. I was wrong. You were right. My marriage is a lie. My perfect image is a lie. The only real thing was those 3 days with you. Leave her. Choose me. I'm ready to risk everything. My career, my image, my marriage, all of it. For you, for us. For the chance to be myself instead of being Audrey Hepburn. I don't know if I can do this alone, but I think I can do it with you. Meet me next week. Let's plan this. Let's figure out how to make this work. I love you. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that after 3 days, but I do. I love you. All of me. A. She mailed it on September 28th. Dean would have received it September 29th or 30th. September 30th, 5:45 p.m. Dean was driving to a race in Salinas. The letter was in his jacket pocket. He'd read it. He was going to call her when he got back. He never got back. When Audrey heard about the crash, she didn't know about the letter at first, didn't know it had been found, didn't know it was now police evidence. She just knew that James Dean was dead, and that the last time they'd spoken, he'd been angry with her, and that she'd sent him a letter she couldn't take back. The call from her publicist changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just grief. This was survival. The next 72 hours were a blur. Phone calls, negotiations, money changing hands, $100,000, more than most people made in a lifetime, paid to make sure a letter never saw daylight. The official story was that the letter was lost, filed incorrectly, misplaced in the chaos of the accident investigation. It happens. But it didn't happen. It was destroyed, burned, the ashes scattered. The only evidence that Audrey Hepburn and James Dean had a 3-day affair in September 1955 erased from existence. The officer who found it, Ron Nelson, retired in 1970. Never spoke about the letter. Not to the press, not to his family. Took the secret to his grave in 1994. The publicist who arranged the payment died in 1988. Left instructions that certain files be destroyed upon his death. They were. Audrey went back to Mel, stayed married to him for another 13 years. Never mentioned James Dean except to say, such a tragedy, so young, such a talent. But the guilt ate at her. Every day. For 38 years. She blamed herself for Dean's death. Convinced herself that if she hadn't written that letter, if she hadn't distracted him, if she hadn't made him emotional, maybe he would have been more careful. Maybe he would have seen that Ford turning left. Maybe he would have lived. The rational part of her knew that was absurd. Car accidents happen. Dean drove recklessly. The crash wasn't her fault, but grief and guilt don't care about logic. In 1979, 24 years after Dean's death, Audrey was doing an interview. The interviewer asked if she had any regrets. Yes, she said quietly. I regret not being braver when I was younger. I regret choosing safety over passion. I regret letting fear make my decisions. Can you be more specific? No, she said. Some regrets are too personal to share. In 1989, she was asked the same question. This time, she said, I regret every time I chose my image over my truth. I regret every time I let someone else define who I should be instead of discovering who I actually was. Is there a specific moment you're thinking of? Several, but they're in the past, and nothing I say now will change them. On her deathbed, January 1993, Audrey asked to speak to a priest, not for last rites, for confession. Father, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone. And she told him about James Dean, about 3 days in September, about the letter, about the cover-up, about carrying the guilt for 38 years. Do you believe God has forgiven you? The priest asked. I don't know, Audrey said. But I can't forgive myself. I let fear control me. I chose my career over love. And then I paid $100,000 to hide that choice. And a man died knowing I'd rejected him. And I've spent nearly 4 decades wondering if that emotional state contributed to his accident. You know that's not rational, the priest said gently. Guilt isn't rational, Father. It's just real. She died 4 days later. The confession stayed with the priest, sealed by religious law, never to be revealed. But in 2019, a researcher going through Warner Brothers archives found something, a letter, misfiled, forgotten, not the original, that had been destroyed, but a copy. Someone, somewhere, had made a copy before the original was burned. The letter was exactly as described, from A to Jimmy, describing a 3-day affair, begging him to choose her. Signed with love. The researcher brought it to Audrey's estate. They verified the handwriting. It was hers. They made a decision. This letter had been secret for 64 years. It would stay secret. Audrey had wanted it destroyed. They would honor that wish. The copy was locked in a vault, not destroyed. Historians objected, but sealed, not to be opened for 100 years, until everyone involved is dead, until it's history instead of scandal. So the letter exists, somewhere, in a vault, waiting, and someday, maybe in 2055, someone will open it, read it, and understand that Audrey Hepburn and James Dean had 3 days together in September 1955. 3 days that might have changed both their lives. 3 days that ended in tragedy and guilt and a cover-up that cost $100,000. But for now, it's still secret. Still protected. Still the story they don't tell about Audrey Hepburn. The story about the 3 days that changed everything. And the 38 years of guilt that followed. And the love letter that almost destroyed her career. And the $100,000 that made it disappear. James Dean died with that letter in his pocket. Died knowing Audrey had chosen him. Died before they could be together. And Audrey lived 38 more years. Became a legend. Did beautiful work. Touched millions of lives. But she never forgot those 3 days. Never stopped wondering what might have been. Never stopped feeling guilty about the letter, about the cover-up, about choosing her image over her truth. That's the real story. Not the fairy tale, not the perfect image, not the graceful princess. The story about the woman who fell in love in 3 days, who wrote a desperate letter, who paid a fortune to hide it, who carried the guilt until she died. The story about Audrey Hepburn and James Dean. 3 days in September, a love letter in a pocket, a crash on Highway 46, and a secret that cost $100,000 to keep. Some loves are too dangerous to survive. Some truths are too costly to speak. Some secrets are worth more than money can measure. This was all 3.